Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back if you attended the morning session. My name is Ilir Beyleri. I'm a faculty here at the University of Florida. With me today are two of my team members, Signal 4 Analytics team members, Dan Brown and Marnie Fowler.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Dan and Marnie will be asking questions and providing information for you as we go. To communicate with us, you need to hover the mouse on the screen, move it toward the bottom of your screen. You should see a toolbar and concentrate on the Q&A button. That's where we'd like you to ask all the questions, and we will provide answers. You can ask questions anonymously if you like. We will compile an anonymous list of questions and answers at the end of this webinar. Therefore, we'd like your activity there as much as possible. There is also the chat button that you are welcome to use, but I would limit it for technical issues with perhaps the audio or anything else following the webinar. The raised hand doesn't really do much for us. You could just simply use chat again, or just go to the Q&A. We'll respond to the questions in writing during the webinar, or for some questions we might respond at the end. And depending on the time and the question, we may not be able to answer everything today during the webinar, but definitely we'll answer them afterwards and share the list with everyone. And of course, for any non-pressing questions, you can email me at any time at my email address on the screen. That's ilir@ufl.edu. For anyone that may not be hearing us, obviously they won't hear what I'm saying at this point, but they may want to hopefully look at the screen and focus on the audio setting button on the toolbar, and use that to pick the right speaker if you are on your computer, or simply leave the computer audio and just join on the phone using the phone number that was provided with the registration. We will record this webinar and make it available for viewing afterwards. All participants after the webinar will receive the PowerPoint slides I'm using here, the list of questions and answers, and a link to watch the recorded webinar at your convenience. We are offering 4 sessions, so we covered the overview and basic features this morning. Today we'll cover advanced features. Tomorrow at 11, we'll cover network analysis, and then in the afternoon, citations and reporting. I should mention that this webinar is a repeat of the exact same webinar we did last week. And so will be the network analysis and citation reporting. And if you're with us today, I'm glad that you're here. Apparently your schedule probably didn't work last week, or you had the option to pick and choose. So more specifically today, we will dig in deeper on that filter panel we saw in the morning. We'll see some searches based on geographic area, based on the street network, based on DHS&V report number. We'll look at codable crashes, which is something that probably most folks are not aware of that is there. We'll talk about crash types. We'll see a new kind of chart. We call it 2D chart, or two-dimensional chart, or bubble chart, and as well as collision diagrams. And we will see how to export the data in GIS. We also have a feature that you can save your queries and reuse them in the future. We realize we didn't cover that, so we'll try to cover that today. Before going any further, we have 2 quick polls similar to what we did in the morning, just in case we have other folks in the afternoon that didn't take the morning session, or there is an overlap. We would like to basically know your experience with Zoom installation, as well as the experience with Signal 4. This is primarily to help us be more efficient during the webinar, but also improve this for future cases. So I will put these polls up, and you simply need to vote. So here goes the first one. You can go there and please click on yes, no, whether you've had any help from your IT to install Zoom or not. Thank you for voting. We're at 72% right now. Please keep voting. Just got a few more seconds. Most of you, looks like similar to in the morning, didn't need any assistant, which is really good news. We like this software and hopefully continue to use it. It's at 70. We're at 79%, 80%. I'll leave it up for a few more seconds. 82%. Okay, I guess I will close it here and share the results with you. You should be able to see them on the screen. So most of you, only 2%, in this case, just 2 people did need some help. If you had trouble with the Zoom installation, please email me and tell me what kind of trouble. I'd like to know so that we can try to minimize these issues in the future for future webinars. We'll be continuously offering webinars on Signal 4. Okay, I'll stop sharing the result, and we have a second poll. We wanted to know what your experience is with Signal 4 analytics. Let me go to the slide. So that's what that poll is going to look like. Simply pick one of the 3 choices. Here we go. Go ahead and vote. All right, it seems like the result is similar to what we had in the morning. Most folks have some experience, which is good. And a smaller number, extensive experience. We're at 80% voting. If you wouldn't mind to finish this vote, would be great. 85%, couple more seconds. All right, thank you very much. I'll end the polling and share the results with you. So there you can see about 27% you have not experienced or have not had a chance to use Signal 4 in the past. I'd like to welcome you and hopefully give you the opportunity to do so after these webinars. Hopefully you'll find it encouraging and useful. And at this point, we'll go ahead and stop sharing the results and go back to continuing with the webinar. So let's look at the advanced features. I will pull up Signal 4 back here on the screen. And what I have is a query. Let me click on the Hide Unused Filter button at the bottom. So I have, I'm looking at the last 3 months of crash data in Alachua County. We have about 2,298 crashes, and close to 2,000 of them are mapped. So the first item I would like to look at on the filters is to look at the opportunities that there are here to search by network. You could do, essentially, when you're looking at an area, you're looking at all the crashes in a given area. So we know that is some sort of a polygon. Say Alachua County, in this case, is a polygon boundary, right? It's an irregular polygon. In many cases, we want to look at specifically at network features, which are, say, a given intersection or a given street or a collection of streets, which we can refer to as a route, right? So those filters are available under street network. Here under crash filters, that's the very first filter. And over here, you can expand the network extent, and then you've got three options: intersection, street, or custom network. So before I choose, I'm going to zoom into a specific area here around University of Florida. So let's just say I want to focus on, and start with an intersection and say I want to focus on this intersection. So the way it works is you choose the intersection open, then you have two options on how to look at crashes associated with that intersection. The first option is to actually start typing intersection name, for example, West University Avenue, and it will fill it out automatically with all the intersections that contain that West University Avenue in the name. I have to admit that this is probably not the best option. I can go, say, and click on this one, which is not exactly that location, is a different location. And so what it does, it puts this little bubble at the intersection of choice and zooms to it, right? So this is one option. The other option, which I would strongly recommend, and that's typically what we use, you know your area, you know the intersections you want to look at, so you can simply zoom, use the map to zoom around it, and then click on the map. So I will demonstrate that in a second, but before I do that, I'd like to take the opportunity to show you another hidden quote-unquote feature here that probably not folks are aware. Under this little round button, when it activates, I talked about these in the morning, but there is a previous extent button. Previous extent would zoom you back to where you were. So in this case, if I wanted to go to that intersection that I pointed earlier, then I have to just click on it, and this sends me directly back there. So think of it as a back button, but strictly limited to the map. It doesn't apply to anything else here, or you can go forward, right? It's focused specifically on the zoom level on the map. So my other choice, as I said, is to, instead of typing the intersection name, which works, but it's not probably the best option, because sometimes, you know, the database doesn't have the perfect names there. So then you pick intersection on the map. You choose this button, you click on it, and then you get some instruction. It says click a point on the map to select an intersection. So I'm going to click somewhere in here. Give it a second. It's locating that intersection in our database. It's putting the name in here. And at this point, I have selected it. I'm ready to complete it. There are a couple of more options. You will clear that intersection and select another one, or make adjustment as needed, or zoom to the intersection level. So if I'm zoomed way out, if I click on zoom, it brings me to a visible good scale to look at that intersection. At that point, when you're done, you've chosen the intersection. So I'd like to draw your attention back to the query filter panel, right? So here you can see it says it lists the intersection that we've chosen. It also has an option to include crashes within an offset distance of 250 feet. This is a default value that we use. It's used by also Florida DOT. You could change that though to any number. For now, I'll just leave it the way it is. You can also narrow the crashes by direction. So if you wanted only crashes in the north leg or in the west leg or so, then you would check one of these. I will not check these. I'll simply going to hit the search button at this point, and the computer is going to pull all the crashes associated with this intersection. There they are, right? So we have 16 crashes. If you look at the bottom of the data grid, which now is updated to show those crashes, there are 16 retrieved, and all 16 are mapped, which is excellent. I'd like to point out something that's important here that for you that you've been using Signal 4 for a while may already be aware of. when I said crashes associated with this intersection, what we really mean is that during the mapping process, if we're able to establish an association of the crash with the street network, whether it's a street segment or whether it's an intersection, then each crash behind the scene get that association put in place. And therefore, when I query by intersection, then it's easy for us to pull all the crashes associated with that intersection ID. However, during mapping process, as I mentioned earlier, there are imperfections, and a number of crashes do not get that association with a network. So but they may still be mapped approximately. So they're plotted at their latitude, longitude location that it's coming from the police crash report, but because the names don't match or other challenges, it does not get associated with that intersection or a street segment. And therefore, it may show up there, but it may not be pulled up when you do a query by intersection or by street or by custom street for that matter. So you've got this option, or you can use the custom area option, which I'll explain shortly. Now that you have these crashes in here pulled by intersection, you can study them more closely. For example, I would turn on the aerial photography so I can see the built environment in this area. And then you can look at, obviously, bar charts. For example, say, look at the crash type. All right, what kind of crashes do we have mostly in here? What's going on in this intersection, for this 3-year period? Is that 3-year? No, this is just, I'm sorry, just for the first 3 months of this year. And if you can see, they have dominant rear end crashes. And if you want to see them, you just click on the bar, and those crashes will be automatically selected. And you can see they're selected in the chart, in the data grid, as well as in the map. You can study them more closely. In the vertical toolbar on the map, if you wanted to look at just those crashes, at the very top button that when you hover says shows all, and you click on it, then you have an option to show just selection only. If you choose that, now you can see everything, the map, the chart, and the data grid is showing only these crashes. Then to clear this selection and to bring back all the crashes, you have this little red X button, which clear the selection. So if I click on it, now the selection is cleared and all the crashes are revealed back. The second option at the intersection, at the network extent analysis, is to use a street, right? Street is when you go there and you select a street of interest, right? So before I do that, let me actually cancel this. Let me change my map to the cartographic map, zoom out a little bit so that we can see better. Let's say I want to select this West University Avenue. Right, I want to select the West University Avenue street. So here's the way it's done in Signal 4. Over here, I would clear the option. So if I was doing intersection, I could jump to the street directly or clear that selection by clicking none and then click street again. Here I can type the street name, for example, West University Avenue. As you can see, this has the perfect match, just one choice. I click on it, and then the West University Avenue is selected. Notice, though, that I would have expected that, yeah, West University Avenue will probably be only this section here up to this location. But instead, there is an extension further there. There is a piece over here. There is a piece here, and there may be another piece over there. right? This could be just the way the streets are named, or it could be an issue with naming of the street that sort of basically comes from the base map. So if I really, all I wanted to do is just query crashes only on that street, I may want to eliminate these extra segments. Over here in the toolbar, you have some options. We have this tool called Add Remove Segments, or the highlighter tool. When you select that, you can come in here and you can highlight an additional segment or remove the highlight or the selection from an existing segment. So if I hold, as the instructions indicate, if I hold Shift, I'll be able to remove. If I hold Control while I'm using this tool, I'll be able to pan the map left and right, up and down, so they can get to see the portion of the segments that I'd like to see. So let me show you how you clear the unwanted segments. Hold down the Shift key. See how this tool now changed to an eraser. So when I do that, all I have to do is just click on these segments. And then, as I said, I have more in here, so I need to basically erase them. I'm sorry. And I had a little piece in here, so erase them. When I'm done with those, I click Done. And then you have the Zoom to Street button, which is going to zoom to the extent of the portion of the street that's highlighted. At this point, say I'm happy with my selection. I can click Done. And I can then run the query. Remember, all I did at this point is picking the street network of interest, right? In this case, West University Avenue. So I need to hit search to be able to pull all the crashes along that street. And there you have it. 85 crashes, 85 are mapped. You would look here at the bottom. And then obviously you can study them with the bar charts or see what's going on. Again, even with these, in this particular stretch of the roadway, there's the distribution of crash types. And clearly, rear end is the dominant type. There is a third option in here that we call custom network. Let's just say you are interested in looking at a specific route, which, as I said, we can define that as a collection of segments. And you can highlight that route and see what's going on with crashes. So say I'm going to do something like along this line and then come down here, which is not a single street, but is a collection of multiple streets. So let's go ahead and choose custom network. Like we did with street, here we have the option to basically select the custom network, but there is no name, as you can see. You'll have to use this interactive tool. So again, pick the highlighter tool. Notice something before I pick it. If you're zoomed way too far out, the highlighter tool is disabled, and when you hover over it, you see that it says zoom in to add remove segment. So essentially what this means is you're too far out to clearly see those segments and make good choices as far as accuracy. So it says zoom in a little closer. And then at this point, when this becomes available, I can start selecting them. Just like we use a highlighter tool. Let's just say as I do this, it's picking more things that I want it to, right? So I can come over here with a shift, clear them. And I'm going to continue to add. Let's assume this is some sort of a bus route inside University of Florida. And we wanted to see what's the situation with crashes. And then erase that. Right? So I've got this, and then we could keep going, obviously. if you wanted to do, but let's just say we'll keep it like that. That's plenty. So there's my custom street network or custom network. Once I'm done with it, I click done, and then I click zoom to it so that I can see better what I've selected. And then at that point, hit done. Now I have the network. I need to run the query, so hit search again. And it's pulling all the crashes. Clearly, I don't have any crashes in this inner roads, right? Which is a good thing. Primarily, the crashes are in the main roads. However, if I change the date range and say I go in the last 3 years instead, so I'll change this to 2000. I'll just change it to 2015, and then hit search again. We'll see what happens. 295 crashes, and apparently not many crashes in the inner roads, but a bit more crashes in, a lot more crashes, obviously, along these major roads where the traffic is. So you can see how this works. It's a useful tool that can be applied to cases where your network configuration requires it or supports it, or depending on the kind of studies that you're conducting. Now, because that association during mapping with the segment or intersection it's imperfect, is less than perfect. Sometimes with this approach you may miss crashes. Those crashes may be happening in the nearby parking lots, or they're simply incorrectly mapped or approximately mapped. So you have an option to define an area, and that's done under Geographic Extent. So Geographic Extent here is under Geographic Area. Again, it's under the geographic area is under Time, Place, and Agency filter group. So if I expand the Geographic Extent here, I have this option on Custom Area. So I will explain that. I'll explain that now. Before I do that, let me zoom out here a little bit, and then I want to show you some options, how we use these map layers. So you can see I have hospitals, schools, fire department, and police station. Let's say I wanted to focus on looking at crashes around a school. Right, so I'm going to turn schools, turn schools on, so we can start to see some schools in here. And over here, if you hover on any of these, you get the school name, but this is the Gainesville High School. So let's say I'm interested in this area. I want to see what's going on with crashes around this school, right? You can see the outline of this school is irregular, so this would be an ideal candidate for the custom area definition. So I'll have to come to the custom area. Once I choose that, I have this little Add New Area button. You also see that there are some other existing saved areas here from the work that I've been doing previously. So, but in your case, if you never used it, you will see an empty list here, but the Add New Area would be active. So you just have to digitize the area around the place of interest. So select it. When you select it, is the familiar view of this toolbar at the top. You can choose one of these three shapes, a square, circle, or a regular polygon. If you wanted to simply do a buffer or a circular buffer around this school, choose the circle and then draw a buffer like that. Obviously, this is not very well centered, so when you move the cursor inside it, hold it, you can just drag it and place it more so that it's more regularly shown. Now, we don't have a dynamic display of the radius of this button, of this, circle. But if you look at the bottom of the screen, you have a reference map. So you can compare the diameter of the circle with this reference map. So clearly this is more than 1,000 feet, right? And I can make it bigger. If you pick one of these corners, you can resize it and move it around. When you're done, click inside the shape, and then you're good to go. At this point, you've got the shape. Let's hit search. Now, before I do that, I want to reduce my date range so that we don't have to wait for long queries. So now there's 34 crashes within this circle. That's in close proximity of Gainesville High School just in the last 3 months, right? So this is one way you can use the custom tool. The other method is to actually draw a shape around it that's more irregular. So again, you can come over here, add new area, and I'll pick the polygon. So now I will expand. Let's just say that I want to find out, oops, let me try this again. Let's say I want to find out, the areas that are, the residential areas that are close to this school. Hopefully, most of the students will be coming from those areas, so we want to look at the network around them. We could do something. I'm going to keep it simple for now. Do something like that. And then when you're done, simply double click. Right, let's say this is my shape, my area of influence or interest. Then click in the center. Then you've got it. At this point, we can hit the search button again. So now I'm getting more crashes, within the area that I have. And if I go to 3 years of data, or 2015, almost a little over 3 years. So there's crashes that were not only on this main road here, but there is some that are on this other road as well, right? And then you can study these, use the charts, export the data, study the data grid, and look at individual crash reports, and so on. I want to point out here that when you're happy with your shape and you realize that its shape is frequently used for what you need to do, we recommend that you save it to avoid digitizing it every single time. You have a save button here. And just give it a name that makes sense to you. So I'm going to say Gainesville High School 2. I got a few in there. At this point, this is ready, and I don't have to digitize it anymore. So you can see some other shapes that I have here. All you got to do to go to those shapes is click on your list. So Gainesville High, this is the shape that I digitized when I did this same webinar last week. Or are there more shapes here? Well, let's see. What did I do? A University and 13th Street. So this shape I digitized when I studied this intersection, which brings me to a further discussion of what we started before. So when we look at crashes at an intersection, you've got the option to click on it, or you have the option to really digitize a completely irregular area around it, and to make sure that you have all your crashes captured. So if I do the last 3 months on this location, I get 40 crashes. There they are. If I did last 3 years, there will be a lot more crashes. Right? So you could see the options that you've got. So to summarize, the geographic area that you could choose is either the whole state, these are predefined boundaries, a DOT district, an MPO, a given county, a specific city. There are city boundaries here you could choose from. And then you have this option, custom area, which you have to establish, digitize it, and then save it. These are also editable. So if I were to change this area, I have to select it, which I do have it selected, and I have to click Edit Area. Now this is in edit mode, so if I wanted to make it more perfect or you know, do whatever I need to do, all you got to do is just grab this little squares, and you can make more accurate definition of this area. Another way to edit this is to hover along any of the segments and you get a midpoint. So you can grab it from that, you can click at that. If you click on it, it will add extra points in there. So that gives you more flexibility that then would allow you to fine-tune this shape to whatever meets your need best, right? So again, hover, and you should see a little circle at the midpoint. You could densify these squares to get a more accurate shape. You can move the whole thing. If you're inside, you can move left, right, up, down. And then when you're done again, or resize the whole thing, like I can do that, although you don't want to do that in this particular case since you have a regular shape. When you're done, just click on it, and now you have an edited shape in place, and then you can rerun the query. So there is a last option under Geographic Extent, which is Current Map Extent, which essentially pulls the crashes in the visible map extent. So when you do something like that, it doesn't go by city, county boundary, or any of that, doesn't go by custom area. It just goes by whatever it's on the map at this point. So if I did that, let me change the date range to stay with the last three, it should put a bunch of crashes that fall in this particular portion of the map that I'm looking at. So let's jump at another important topic here that folks has asked for. We've included it here, and as we understand, many users make use of this feature. You can search by database. There are a few options here. I will cover the DHSMV report number, and I'll cover the DHSMV codable crashes. Let's look at the DHSMV report number. In some instances, you happen to know the number from some source, right? Whether it was from Signal 4 or directly from DHSMV or from law enforcement, you are looking for a specific report number. A report number, usually it is a 8-digit number. So if you know that number, all you got to do is just type it in here. So I have a number ready on my cheat sheet, so I'll paste it in there. And that's the number that I'm looking for. I just need a specific crash, right? Notice that when I put a number there, all these other filters in the query panel are grayed out. That makes sense, right? Because they are no longer applicable. I'm specifically looking for a given report. So once you put the report in there, hit search. Oh, it didn't find it. This must have been a long report. Let me go back to clear this. And then I'm back to where I was. So let's just do a quick search and look for a report that we know it's there. The good news is that when you do that and it's not there, it means it's not in Signal 4. And at that point, you need to contact us to see what's going on. So I'm going to look for this first report here. It's 877-01185. So I'll go back here and just type that up. 877-01185. And then hit search. Okay, now we found it. Well, we knew it was going to find it, right? Because we just saw it was there. And that's all it does. It zooms the map to where the report is, to the crash is. It gives you that single report here in the data grid, and the rest of it, it's exactly the same as we've been showing so far. Notice that when you zoom real close, you get, in addition to the color that indicates crash injury severity, you get also an icon here that shows you the crash type. That's what connects to this one here, right? So, which I mentioned earlier, or I might have mentioned this morning, actually. So that's the connection there. It makes the information a bit more useful to you. Now, there are many cases where you may have more than one report. Can you put more than one in there? You sure can. If you have them, say 2 or 3, you could just put a comma in there and start typing the other, put another comma, start typing the other, and so on. But if you have more than just a handful, a more efficient way to do this, and that will save you time, is to put those in a simple spreadsheet on a column, and then use load from file to load all those reports at the same time. So I've prepared something for this training. And here I have an Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of HSMV report numbers. And there they are. The only requirement that you need in here is that the field name where you put those reports, first, it has to have a field name. Second, it has to have the keyword HSMV in it. It's recommended you name it HSMV report number, but if you already have it and it's named something else, make sure it includes that HSMV in it, right? It can have also other characters if you like. So over here, I have about 34 records, minus the header, 33 records. So this is the one that I'm going to load and see if it will pick all the reports that are in this one. So let me close it. The way to do this is to clear that and then click load from file. Then we got to go to that particular location on our folder where the Excel spreadsheet is located. Pick it up. And you can see all it did, it put those reports in there, or those report numbers in there for us, and it separated them by commas. So it will save you from typing, especially if this is repetitive, then it's best to save them on the Excel spreadsheet. So at this point, I've got the report numbers. Let's hit search and see if it will find them. It came back and found 0 of the 33 reports. Okay. So those clearly are some old numbers that I'm using. So let me go and grab some newer one that we used last time. Okay. I'm navigating to my folder again, and I'm going to use these. Oh, let's open that so you can see it first. Just like what I showed you, just has less. I mean, it makes the same point. So it put those numbers in there and then hit search. Now that's not good. I think there's something going on there which I can't tell. That explains why my longer list didn't work. Well, at this point, we're not going to sweat this. What you're going to see is the same thing that you saw when I ran a single report, except that it will pull all of them, or at least the ones that are in Signal 4. Actually, I'd like to point out something here. this version of Signal 4 that I'm using here, it's not the production one. It's not the one that you have access at the moment. It's a staging one that we're using for testing. Is the one that we will update the production one based on this when after these webinars. So by the end of the day tomorrow, or at most on Thursday, Signal 4 will include some of these new features that we have here, including citations and reporting. So the reason this may not be working, it's because it's running from a test site and it's potentially using a test database. So let me clear this, and let's talk about another feature that we have in here that not many folks are aware of or use it. Is this one called DHSMV codable crashes. You may ask, what is codable, right? So I remember I've asked that question once before as well. So you need to click on this little I button there, and here you have the definition. These are crashes that Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicle reports to federal government. So we've got, you know, over 700,000 crashes each year in Florida, unfortunately, but not all of them get reported or qualify or meet this definition. And therefore, if you wanted to know only the crashes that meet this definition here and are reported or used in the DHSMV crash facts, then you need to choose this option here. So there's the definition. We don't need to go over it in detail. You can look at that at any time as soon as you get inside Signal 4. So if you want the codable crashes, then you need to choose codable and then rerun the query again. So let me do that. Oh, I'd like to change the geographic extent back to Alachua County. So then hit search. So I have 1,428 crashes that are codable. Remember, I had over 2,000. So if I had included all crashes reported during this period, the number would be larger than codable. Codable are usually long form crashes, but the details are on that definition. I would encourage you to look at that. And if you have a use for this specific subset of crashes, you can use this feature. So let's go back to the intersection that I was showing early. So I'm going to pick a custom area. I'll go to the network, to the geographic extent custom area, and then I'm going to pick that intersection. There's my custom area, and then let me run the search. I've got about 25 crashes in here, right? You can see all they have their own icon, whether it's a rear end or a pedestrian or a side swipe. The ones that have that are shown by this purple circle have more than one crashes in there that occurred, or they are mapped at exactly the same spot. So if you click on it, there's two crashes in there. They're both rear end crashes, and then you can click on each of them to look more about their characteristics, right? So if you wanted to study this intersection a little bit closer with these choices, then you can basically use this definition and then start exploring this more using the charts. And we'll look at 2D charts. So let's go ahead. It's not just the intersection, right? There's a little bit more to it. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more data here. So I'm going to go to 2000. say 2016, so there is 3 years of data. You make sure that when you change something is to click on the other one to complete this date range so that the search button becomes active. So I have 156 crashes in this area, right? We can hop over here to the bar chart and then look and see what's going on with the types of these crashes. You can see that I have majority of them are rear end, but there are side swipe, pedestrian, bicycle, left entering, right angle. So there is a variety of these crashes. There is one also called other. So you may be wondering, what do they all mean? And then there is one that's unknown, right? So let's talk a little bit more about crash types. If you scroll over here, there is another filter under circumstances, an important filter called crash type. This filter, its crash type does not exist as an attribute in the current Florida crash form. It is what we call a derived attributes. We've derived it using an algorithm that we've developed that's been in place for many years now. So to learn more about crash type, you start by clicking on this little I button, and it explains how it was derived. So it looks at multiple fields, including first harmful event, manner of collision or impact, number of vehicles, maneuver, vehicle direction, and so on. And then if you want even more information, you can click on that link and you get this PDF, which explain the crash types more in detail. I encourage you to explore this. All right. Under other, I wanted to show that under other, we group a bunch of crashes that have smaller frequency, like single vehicle, parked vehicle, or backed into. You can choose to see them individually or to see them grouped. Plus, the unknown means that we couldn't determine the crash type. It basically, there is not enough information to do that. Right. Now, there are two options. Right now, we have a detailed crash type, but you simplify it by looking, say, for left turn, you just have left turn and you don't have all the details on the directions and so on. So depending on what your choices are and your needs are, I'd encourage you to play around with both, look at the differences, look at that document, and then see what would be the most useful for you. I'll take a moment to explain this 2D charts. 2D charts combine combine two variables. I'm sorry. One is you've got a list for each, attribute 1, attribute 2. So this particular one shows distribution of crash type by crash severity, right? So you can see dominance here on no severity on rear end, but you have also some possible severity over here. And there are other options that you could see. Let's look at crash type and say light condition, right? In a dark lighted area, you've got about 19 crashes, or you have 7 crashes that are angled on daylight. All you got to do is just click on the bubble to see where those crashes are, and you can see there's a bunch that are here in the intersection, and then there is another one down there, right? As I mentioned before, and then there are some up there because we've included it. You can narrow it down to just those by choosing the option to show only those crashes. Clearly, at this intersection, at that other one, there is an overlap. So you have more than one over there. To clear your selection, you click on the little red X. So I'd encourage you to play around with these and do different combinations. For example, let's see what's the distribution of these crashes by day of the week. Right? Do we see anything in some days more than in other days? Well, on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday seem to have the higher number of crashes for this study area based on, based on our choices here. So we can look at it more closely to study it in detail. Now, if you, I wanted to mention the collision diagrams, which traffic engineers use frequently. Collision diagrams, what they provide is a summary of attribute by crash types. They're usually non-map based and not georeferenced. What we've done here, we have provided the solution as an alternative to the traditional collision diagrams. The map shows you where the crashes are occurring and how they're concentrated, and these 2D bubble diagrams show you the grouping. And you can do all sorts of combinations to see what's going on between two attributes. So if you wanted to see that you have, for example, a problem on Fridays with rear end crashes, or you've got problems with not anything popping up in this particular location, but there would be other locations that there could be some types that would be more dominant than others, and then you can see what you can do from the engineering perspective to be able to address those issues. So the combination of the map and these 2D charts can serve as the collision diagrams for your needs. You can zoom in closer to here and then look at the specific crash types by exploring also these symbology that shows you the crash type by these arrows. One last thing I wanted to cover, since we are out of time, is to show how to export the data in the GIS format. Here I have way too many data to wait for it to export, so let me narrow down the date range to just the last 3 months, and then I'll run it. So I've got 25 crashes. I can go ahead, say if I wanted to study those and put them in an external, export them out, download them and put them in another package. This is where I would export them. In the export, I would choose ArcGIS file geodatabase. For those that are familiar with GIS, you would understand what that means. It's a file format that's proprietary. It's by ESRI, but then most people use their software, so we chose to offer this because it's easy to use. So I'm not going to check the crash reports. We explained how to do that earlier today. So let me go ahead and export just these two. So see this message? I don't want to wait. Email me a download when ready. Now, obviously, we don't have time to do that. So, plus this download was pretty quick. Oh, okay. Never mind. It doesn't. I could download it and look and see what's downloaded. There it is. There's the zip file. So if I extract all, there's the data. So this is the CSV file we showed earlier, and S4 Crash GDB is that file geodatabase for the GISers in the room. So all you got to do is open your GIS software and load that up. I'm using Pro here. So I'm simply going to go to Add Data and then go to the download location where I downloaded it. Sorry, I need to refresh. It's this one. And there's the geodatabase. So that's my S4 crash with the 25 records. And it came up here. Let me change the symbology, make it this red. And there they are, right? They are around this intersection. I can zoom to it. And there's all those crashes that we're looking at signal for now inside the ArcGIS software, and then you can use them. It has all the attributes, so you can open the table for it. There's the attribute table at the bottom. Now, if you're using ArcGIS 10.x, then there is no difference. You can simply do what I just did in this other version. But in addition, what you have if you're using ArcGIS 10.x is that it comes with an MXD for you. So you can, instead of doing what I just did, you can just double click on MXD and it will load, it will open the MXD and it will load those crashes for you automatically. At this point, I'd like to stop here. There are a couple of minor things that we left out, but they are not very frequently used, and we will follow up with any outstanding questions, although I don't see any that's listed. But I'd like to take the opportunity to see if there is any more question that or concerns that any of the attendees has before we close. Okay, please let us know if you'd like to see additional features in Signal 4. We always would like to hear from you and make improvements. Then for any questions or for anything else discussion, please contact me at this number, as well as I prefer email, but for any urgent matter, you can always feel free to call me on my cell phone here. And I'd like to close this session number 2 here. And tomorrow, I hope to see you back here with the other session, session 3, which is on network analysis. Apparently not many folks have been using it, so we dedicated a whole session for it. And in the afternoon, citations and reporting, which will show you some interesting new features of Signal 4 analytics. Thank you very much.